We've had a lot of bad news in the industry recently. A lot of bad news. Lots of layoffs, lots of cancellations, lots of discussions of restructurings, as they say. It's about time we had some perhaps good news, pray tell. Well, Larian, the guys behind Baldur's Gate 3, are opening a 7th studio in Warsaw. It says growing the team is crucial, quote, with 2 very ambitious RPGs now starting development. They're actually expanding. It's their first Polish studio, and it will help with the development of Larian's next 2 upcoming, as yet unannounced titles. We don't really know what these are. We know that they've said very clearly they're not doing a DLC for Baldur's Gate. They're not doing a sequel. And it seems like they just want to go back to their own IP, something original, which could just be a continuation of the Divinity Original Sin games. Or it could mean that they're doing one of those and then maybe also like a sci-fi one. People have rumored that maybe they would try their hand at a sci-fi RPG. We don't really know, but it's probably original. It's probably something totally different. Be careful of expanding too fast. That's a good point, Nemesis. Very, very crucial. A lot of studios are guilty of expanding too much and too quickly. And then having to cut it back. It's the old thing of in my backyard, we had a spot where the grass wasn't growing, so we seeded the crap out of it. And what they tell you to do, the lawn doctor guy, he was like, oh yeah, you got to let it basically overgrow and fill in. So it overexpands and then you trim it down to exactly where you need it. So, the sod spreads way more than you need it. And then you go in there and shape it precisely as you want it. And unfortunately, a lot of executives treat businesses the same way. They don't really think of it intentionally, I would say, as people and you are firing human beings. They think of it as, well, we scaled to this level of employee count and we scaled to this many square feet of office space, whatever. And now we're going to trim it down to what we need it to really be. It's the same thing that a lot of these guys tend to do. So I absolutely think that they should be cautious with expansion, but I'm sure they are really thinking this through because they seem to have a good head on their shoulders. Quote, with 2 very ambitious RPGs now starting development, what better way to see our visions realized than by growing the team and opening a 7th studio in the heart of Poland's lively gaming scene. Larian Warsaw joins the main studio at Larian in Belgium, as well as other Larian studios in Canada, Ireland, Malaysia, the UK, and Spain. One of the ideas with having all of these studios, I saw somebody on the comments of one of our other videos when we were talking about this stuff. They were like, why do they have these studios spread out so much? Why don't they just make one bigger studio in Belgium where their main studio is? Why don't they just expand that and buy more office space and fill it up with more employees? The idea is that you have people working on the game literally 24/7. The idea is if you can spread out the workload globally, there will never be a time when somebody isn't working on the game. So you can have people on this side of the planet working while these people are asleep, and then they go leave work, and then these guys start work. And if you kind of space it out into thirds around the planet, with Canada, then Ireland, then Spain, then Belgium, and Malaysia, and everything, where you can make sure that pretty much around the clock stuff's being done, and it can improve efficiency and get stuff done a little faster. So that's at least the goal. Beyond that, there's also such a thing as talent shortage. There are only so many people who are qualified to work on a world-class game on the scale of what Larian wants to do. There's only so many people that are that good, right? And you can get people that aren't quite there and train them up and recruit them and get them there, but you got to go where the talent is at the end of the day. And a lot of these companies, you'll see a lot of studios that are centered in similar places. So you'll see a lot of studios in the UK where there's a lot of talent. You'll see a lot of studios built in Quebec or Montreal where there's tons of developers and game studios. And so you start to have developers that live in those areas, and they might move between companies and between businesses, but they're all 20 minutes away from each other from their house. And so it's not that big of a deal to move jobs over to that other one. It's just where the hubs of skilled laborers basically are. So they focus there. And it seems like they're just trying to do something similar where they are spreading out and trying to target those pockets of talent wherever they may be. Larian announced last month that it's now working on 2 new projects based around its own original IPs, following comments from boss Sven Vinke. I still don't know if it's Vinke or Vink, but he said that it was moving on from Dungeons and Dragons universe to try its hand at something else, which is like a little bit of a bummer. I get it. I loved Baldur's Gate and I love the integration with 5e as a game system, but I also get why they'd want to do their own thing. Like, can you really blame them? You spend years and years working on something and it's just like you're limited constantly with what you can and can't do with game systems. I understand it. It's still a little bit like, oh, okay. Being given the chance to develop a game set in the universe, or the Dungeons and Dragons universe, has been a dream come true for all of us, said the announcement. But Sven recently confirmed we won't be introducing any major new narrative content for the story of Baldur's Gate 3 or its origin characters and companions, nor will we be making expansions or Baldur's Gate 4. And they're just saying very clearly, we're not doing it. So stop asking. Stop asking. And the other piece of this is like every copy of Baldur's Gate 3 that they sell, they have to pay Wizards of the Coast. They just do. And it's probably like, obviously, demonstrably, it's not enough to like break the bank. It's not a problem. Otherwise they wouldn't have agreed to do it. But even if it's like 20%, it might be 30%, it might be 20, it might be 10, it might be 5%. We don't really know. But whatever percentage they pay to Wizards of the Coast, that is a cut of the game's sales that they are not getting. And they're pretty confident that, especially after the success of Baldur's Gate 3, they could find similar success in sales with their own IP. So in terms of business, it just makes sense because you'll have wider margins, make more profit on each individual game sold. And beyond that, you also have other things artistically, such as artistic freedom, where you don't have to rely on their approval for certain things. You know, it's Vinco, the same sound you make when you sing learn. Vinco, but the same sound as when you say learn. Vernk? Vinkern? Vinkern? Is that what you mean? I'm more confused now. I'm more confused after trying to pronounce it properly. Anyway, with all of it, you know, they say as an independent studio since 1996, we value the freedom to follow our creativity wherever it leads. In this case, after 6 years in the Forgotten Realms and much discussion and rumination, we've decided to seize this opportunity to develop our own IPs. And I think that it makes sense. Again, it's still like a little bummed because we would love to see another Baldur's Gate game, but I also get it. And if they really believe that whatever they're working on, whatever they've got cooking on the back end privately is like gonna be worth separating out, like that's, can you really question it? You know, you really question? Man, developing a new Baldur's Gate after such a long time, releasing an incredible game, and then just F off is probably the best thing they could have done. Well, it's like, you know, quit while you're ahead, you know, like you either die the hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And for them, they might just be like, honestly, we did the best Baldur's Gate that we possibly could. We did the best D&D RPG or CRPG we possibly could do, and that probably anybody can do. So let's just call it good while we did it, you know? Like, why mess with perfection? And I can respect that. Like, at some point, you just, you know, quit while you're ahead. And they're not even quitting. They're just going to do something else. You know, it's not like they're closing shop or anything. Give Larian a Star Wars license. I don't think they would take it. I don't think they would even take it, honestly. I'm not the biggest fan of sequels. I like letting good things be good and moving on from to better things. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Maybe it's just because, you know, right now, after all the floods of sequels and remakes and remasters, I'm like, God, can we take a break? Maybe that's, you know, I'm particularly sensitive to it, but we'll see. I keep saying we'll see even when it doesn't make sense. We'll see. He took my thing.